Burkina Faso just disarmed 8,000 soldiers and sent them to farms instead of the front lines. No guns, no battles, just seeds, soil, and a radical new mission. Why would a country facing insurgency turn its defenders into farmers? Let's find out. July 2025, the government of Burkina Faso issued a statement that few could believe, and even fewer fully understood. It wasn't about a ceasefire or a new military alliance. It wasn't even about a policy debate or a cabinet reshuffle. It was something far more jarring. President Ibrahim Traoré had officially converted 8,000 trained volunteer fighters into full-time agricultural workers. No ceremonial send-off, no dramatic farewell, just a stark message. The war has shifted. The battlefield is now the farm. This was not a leak or a rumor. It came straight from the presidential office and was broadcast on state television. The declaration was clear, almost blunt. These were not demobilized soldiers. They were redeployed. The language made it unmistakable. Agricultural commandos, deployment zones, national food front. In other words, these young men and women were no longer just fighters. They were now frontline defenders in the war against hunger.
Welcome to Stand Up Africa, where we break down real stories, real news, and real voices from across the continent. If you care about Africa's future, want to stay informed, and hear what mainstream media often misses, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join a growing community that stands up for truth, context, and African perspective. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is for informational and educational use only. We use credible public sources and verified facts to bring you context and clarity. Stand Up Africa does not promote hate, misinformation, or political bias. Our mission is to keep you informed, responsibly and respectfully.
At first, many assumed it was a temporary measure, perhaps a civilian work program disguised as reform. But then came footage that erased any doubt. Thousands of men in military trousers, carrying farming tools across villages, planting fields under the national flag. Uniformed, organized, intentional. Then came the second bombshell. The first group, 2,000 strong, had already completed a secretive 3-month agricultural training camp. Not only had they learned modern farming techniques, but they had also been drilled in community health, tree planting, land reclamation, and irrigation system design. One clip showed former fighters erecting greenhouses in drought-hit provinces. Another showed them digging wells in regions where aid convoys had long stopped arriving. And then, a voiceover from a government broadcaster delivered the message that sent analysts into a frenzy. These young Burkinabe are not leaving the defense force. They are expanding it, into the soil, into the food chain, into the future. Within hours, international media tried to catch up. Some framed it as a clever redirection of idle youth. Others called it a response to budget shortfalls. But insiders and local observers saw something deeper, a structural shift in national priorities. It wasn't just about food, it was about redefining the very meaning of defense, sovereignty, and service. And as the dust settled, more announcements followed. Traoré's government revealed that these 8,000 were just the beginning. A broader plan was underway to mobilize tens of thousands more young people, prison inmates, and even retired officers into strategic agricultural units. Former battlegrounds would be repurposed as green zones. Military vehicles were already being repainted and retrofitted for seed transport and irrigation work. Maps of deployment zones started circulating online, not for combat operations, but for mass cultivation corridors. Provinces long abandoned by both aid organizations and private investors were being marked with colored overlays. Maize here, cassava there, rice paddies along floodplains, and reforestation in degraded belts. But it didn't stop at domestic policy. The message to the world was subtle but undeniable. Burkina Faso was done begging for grain. It was done waiting for relief shipments. It was done by surrendering its youth to war and its future to aid dependency. Even more stunning was how calm the president appeared. He didn't declare a state of emergency. He didn't summon applause. He simply called it logical. Logical to feed one's people. Logical to train fighters to grow food instead of guarding empty shelves. Across African capitals, whispers began. Could this model work elsewhere? Was Burkina Faso simply desperate or dangerously ahead of its time? In neighboring Niger, a youth leader tweeted, "If Traoré turns the army into farmers and they end hunger, it won't be a policy, it'll be prophecy." This breaking news did more than announce a program. It challenged an entire framework. What if military power wasn't in weaponry, but in wheat? What if the next revolution didn't wear camo but carried compost? And what if Burkina Faso had just lit the first match? Let's pause for a second to say a big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland (VDPs) didn't begin as a traditional army. They weren't state soldiers with pensions and long careers. They were a grassroots answer to a country buckling under the weight of chaos. In villages that had no police presence, no food banks, and no certainty of tomorrow, the VDPs were young men and women who said, "We'll defend this land even if no one else will." They were farmers' sons, traders' daughters, school dropouts, shepherds, mechanics, and even ex-child laborers. Many had never left their province before being handed a gun and a uniform. What united them wasn't training or ideology. It was desperation and duty. When Burkina Faso found itself overrun by armed groups, insurgent factions, and foreign-backed militias, the government had neither the resources nor time to build a large formal army. So it turned to its youth. In 2020, the VDPs were formed as a civilian auxiliary force, volunteers, not conscripts, who would defend their communities with light weapons, local intelligence, and minimal oversight. For years, they held the line where the state could not. But the cost was brutal. Thousands of VDPs died. Others were wounded and left without compensation. Still, more were caught in political crossfire, accused by some of being untrained militias, praised by others as local heroes. Their image remained raw, complex, and heavily dependent on which part of the country they were in. But to President Ibrahim Traoré, they represented something else entirely: untapped potential. When Traoré came to power in 2022, with a sharp anti-colonial vision and a belief in grassroots governance, he didn't see the VDPs as disposable wartime tools. He saw them as the nucleus of a new state philosophy: young, loyal, deeply embedded in local communities, and already accustomed to sacrifice. By the way, we have launched merch that honors the African leaders who are taking a stand for Africa. Check them out, to show you also stand with loyal sons of Africa, no matter where you are. That's why, when hunger surged to the top of the national threat list in 2025, Traoré didn't look to foreign NGOs, technocrats, or imported specialists. He looked at the VDPs and saw not just fighters, but builders. They already knew discipline. They already had a command structure. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain. But it wasn't just strategic. It was deeply psychological. These were youths who had been taught to defend land with bullets. Now, they were being asked to nurture it with water and care. That shift is more than professional, it's existential. For a country that had seen so much blood spill on its soil, asking its defenders to now feed that same soil was a healing act. Not symbolic, structural. The decision to retrain them wasn't a rebranding. It was a redefinition. In special training camps, they were stripped of their wartime mindset and slowly introduced to something far more challenging: patience. Farming doesn't give you victory in a day. It takes weeks, months, and trust in a process you can't fully control. And for fighters used to split-second survival, that mental rewiring was no small task. Yet they adapted, many faster than expected. Because buried under the fatigue and trauma was a deeper instinct, the desire to protect life, not just preserve it. And their communities noticed. Villagers who once only saw them in combat gear now watch them lead irrigation efforts, distribute seedlings, and host workshops on soil care. Children once taught to run when the VDPs approached were now running toward them to help plant trees. The state didn't just assign them new roles, it gave them new meaning. For the first time, many of these young volunteers weren't just surviving, they were building legacies. A harvest meant more than rations. A rice paddy meant more than a checkpoint. They were no longer temporary defenders. They were permanent architects of the nation's survival. And perhaps most importantly, they still wore their uniforms. In Traoré's Burkina Faso, the uniform no longer means war, it means work. But why was this even a need? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. There's a quiet war President Ibrahim Traoré is fighting, and it's not with rifles or tanks, it's with memory. The memory of waiting, of watching trucks from foreign agencies roll into starving villages, dumping plastic bags of rice onto dusty tarps, of being told again and again that Burkina Faso could not survive without help. That narrative of powerlessness was drilled into generations. Every drought meant donations. Every failed harvest meant more assistance. In boardrooms far from Ouagadougou, donors held the lifeline and pulled it tighter with every grant. Traoré has chosen to cut that rope. This isn't just an agricultural program, it's economic defiance. Every seed planted by a former soldier is a rejection of the belief that Burkina Faso must always beg to eat. And that rejection is deliberate, calculated, strategic. Why now? Because the aid system, in Traoré's eyes, is not neutral. It's a soft form of control, one that never carries weapons but always leaves nations disarmed. It arrives with logos, slogans, and conditions. Food, yes, but also influence. Relief, yes, but also strings. He saw it during negotiations. He saw it in emergency meetings. Every time Burkina Faso needed food, it had to offer something in return. Political alignment, security cooperation, or silence. So when Traoré turned his defense volunteers into farmers, he wasn't just feeding the people. He was arming the country with independence, and it's working. Pilot zones under the new farming initiative are already showing results that used to require external intervention. Regions that were once entirely reliant on the World Food Program are now producing enough to sell to neighboring villages. In some areas, VDP-led irrigation projects have doubled planting seasons. State-run seed banks are being replenished, not by imports, but by domestic overproduction. And what's more, this strategy is exponentially scalable. Foreign aid works on a per-crisis model. A bad harvest means a new request, a new donor negotiation. However, local production creates circular strength. One good season doesn't just feed families, it generates seed stock for the next. It builds trust in local systems. It revives markets. It restores dignity. Traoré has tapped into something deeper than policy. He's changing the national psychology. For decades, Burkinabe citizens were taught to expect famine, to normalize drought, and to assume suffering. Aid became part of the identity. But now, when people see the same young men who once held rifles managing greenhouses or leading harvests, the story changes. The fear shifts from, "Who will save us?" to, "What can we grow ourselves?" This mental pivot is not incidental. It's engineered. Traoré has coupled the agricultural deployment with national messaging campaigns. Billboards in major cities now show former VDPs standing in fields with the slogan, "Our food, our freedom." School textbooks are being rewritten to include chapters on food sovereignty. National TV broadcasts farming techniques during primetime slots. Every message, every image is driving the same point home. Aid is not salvation. Self-reliance is.
On a quiet morning in July 2025, the government of Burkina Faso issued a statement that few could believe, and even fewer fully understood. It wasn't about a ceasefire or a new military alliance. In the face of these issues, the government led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba decided to implement a bold and unorthodox solution. But why? What was the driving force behind this unusual strategy? It wasn't even about a policy debate or a cabinet reshuffle. It was something far more jarring. In response, the military has been heavily involved in trying to restore order. Sending thousands of soldiers to the fields meant completely rethinking their roles, training, and most importantly, their mindset. The message was clear. The country's future lay not in weapons and warfare, but in the hands of farmers. The soldiers had to shed their combat gear and learn the art of farming. Did they rise to the occasion, or did the transition prove to be too much for them? Many in the local communities couldn't fathom why the government would send soldiers to work the land. But the soldiers weren't daunted by the challenge. With a sense of duty and determination, they got to work. To answer this question, let's take a closer look at how these men adapted to their new reality. They became role models, demonstrating that courage, discipline, and hard work could overcome even the most daunting challenges. The soldiers felt valued and appreciated for their service, which boosted their morale and commitment to their new mission. This positive feedback loop led to a thriving agricultural sector and stronger, more resilient communities. The soldiers' dedication to their new roles served as an inspiration to the local communities, motivating them to embrace change and persevere through tough times. It was a daunting task, but the stakes were high and there was no turning back. The government of Burkina Faso took a leap of faith, betting that investing in agriculture and the well-being of its people would yield long-term benefits. The war against hunger, poverty, and instability is being fought not with bullets. These men, once symbols of combat and defense, have become ambassadors of agriculture and peace. Their transformation has not only addressed the immediate challenges facing Burkina Faso, but has also charted a new course for the country's future. But with seeds, not with tanks, but with tractors, not with bombs, but with bountiful harvests. As Burkina Faso continues to reap the benefits of this bold initiative, it sets an example for other nations grappling with similar challenges. Your story is a beacon of hope, a testament to human resilience, and a blueprint for lasting change. May the fertile fields you tended today yield not just food, but hope, prosperity, and a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and your unwavering commitment to the betterment of Burkina Faso. You are the true heroes of our time. It shows that investing in agriculture, empowering communities, and embracing innovative solutions can pave the way for a brighter future. It's a new way of thinking, a new approach to problem solving, and it's working. And so far, it seems to be paying off. They realized that being a farmer wasn't just about working the land. It was about feeding their country, their families, and their futures. Their journey from the battlefields to the farmlands may seem unconventional, but their impact on their country and communities is undeniable. The soldiers faced numerous challenges, from adapting to a completely different way of life to dealing with the skepticism of the communities they were sent to. The soldiers' presence in the fields helped to alleviate food insecurity, empower local communities, and foster a sense of unity among the people of Burkina Faso. And feel free to drop your thoughts and comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. It was a true testament to the power of human resilience and the potential for positive change in even the most challenging of circumstances. But through it all, they demonstrated remarkable resilience, determination, and a sense of camaraderie that had been forged in the fires of their shared experiences. The locals, who had been living in fear of the extremist groups, felt reassured knowing that the very soldiers who had been fighting against these threats were now working alongside them. It was a powerful testament to the government's commitment to protecting its people. This newfound sense of purpose gave them strength and resilience. They tackled the challenges of farming with the same tenacity they had displayed on the battlefield. Faced with dwindling resources and a growing threat, the government made a pivotal decision. The soldiers learned how to plant, cultivate, and harvest crops, all while adapting to the unique challenges of each region. They became part of the local farming communities, sharing their skills and knowledge while also learning from the wisdom of the local farmers. Instead of sending these soldiers to the front lines, they would be redeployed to the fields. At first, this might seem like a random move, but when you look deeper, you start to understand the brilliant strategy at play. However, as the conflict intensified, the government realized that they needed more than just soldiers to fight the battle. There was a pressing need to address the root causes of the conflict, and the government recognized that investing in agriculture could bring about a lasting change. By sending the soldiers to farms, the government was killing two birds with one stone. They were both strengthening the agricultural sector and reducing the burden on the military, which was overstretched and ill-equipped to handle the escalating crisis. They needed a complete overhaul of their approach to security and farming. The government was going to disarm 8,000 soldiers and send them to farms across the country. The move left many scratching their heads, wondering about the logic and the safety of such a decision. But it's not what you think. This is the story of an extraordinary transformation, a revolution in the literal sense of the word. Let's take a step back and explore the situation in Burkina Faso, a landlocked country in West Africa grappling with security challenges and food insecurity. In recent years, Burkina Faso has faced a surge in attacks from extremist groups, leading to instability and loss of life. Enter the 8,000 soldiers, ordinary men who were thrust into extraordinary circumstances. You see, the security situation in Burkina Faso is complex, and the army alone cannot guarantee the safety of the country. But this was no walk in the park. In fact, the government went even further. They didn't just want these soldiers to learn about farming. They wanted them to become passionate advocates for it. But the real question is, how did these soldiers fare in their new roles? Upon arrival at the farms, the soldiers were met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. It wasn't just about wielding hoes and watering crops. It was about understanding the rhythms of nature, respecting the land, and nurturing life. As weeks turned into months, something remarkable happened. The soldiers discovered a new sense of purpose in their lives. Furthermore, the presence of the soldiers in the fields brought a sense of security to the communities. In fact, the impact of the soldiers on the communities was so profound that it went beyond just agricultural production. Moreover, the government's investment in the soldiers' training and well-being didn't go unnoticed. However, this journey was not without its obstacles. The success of this initiative can be measured not only in terms of agricultural output, but also in the social and security aspects. The soldiers' stories are a testament to the power of human resilience and the transformative power of pursuing a greater good. This brings us to the core of this initiative, the underlying philosophy that led to such an audacious plan. By shifting the focus from military confrontation to community development, Burkina Faso is showing the world that there is more than one way to win a war. In conclusion, the story of the 8,000 soldiers who traded their guns for farming tools is nothing short of inspiring. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are won not on the front lines, but in the fields and communities. So here's to the 8,000 soldiers, the unsung heroes who answered the call to serve their country in an extraordinary way. And as for Burkina Faso, may your journey towards stability, prosperity, and peace continue to inspire the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others. Subscribe to stay updated on our latest content.
That's the latest on this developing story. Thank you for staying with us here on Stand Up Africa. We'll continue to follow the updates and bring you verified information as it unfolds. For more news that matters to Africa and stories that speak for us, make sure to subscribe, share, and stay informed. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.